Hello and welcome to the Impact Zone podcast. I'm back on some more talk the TNA wrestling shenanigans, and I'm going to stop talking like that because I cannot keep it up forever. But I just thought it would be very funny to come on and do that. But anyway, we are going to have I guess our first, little bit of a preview of a TNA Turning Point, which is happening at the WrestleCade event. I think it's about, it's on the 29th of November. So, what's that? That is now about 2 weeks. There we go. Right. I thought it was about 2 weeks, but I wanted to check and make sure. Got a couple of match announcements for Turning Point. We also got a couple of match announcements for next week. One of them, I guess, we're touching on just because it sort of affects one of the matches that we're going to be talking about here, but first off, well, I guess it won't really, but we'll talk about this match first. It is the traditional Thanksgiving Turkey Bowl match, which is a 6-man match, as far as I know, and as far as has been advertised at this point. It might change, who knows, because often these things are many multi-men matches. It contains Joe Hendry, Eric Young, Hammerstone, PCO, Brian Myers, and John Skyler all wrestling against each other in this one. So, yes, that's not that big of a lineup, I guess, because it's usually 2 teams against each other, but this is like a multi-man match where every man's for himself. So I guess it's like a 6-man tag in some regards, because you've got 6 men here. So it's that, I was thinking like it'd have at least 7 or 8, maybe 9, maybe 10 people in this. But yeah, they might change that. We'll have to wait and see, but I doubt that they will at this point, because if they did, they'd probably be saying, well, plus question mark, or whatever. That sort of thing here. And it's not like there's a lot of people that they could really put in this. I think that obviously, to me, this is Joe Hendry's pretty much winning this, just in my opinion. The guy who has the most momentum, the guy who has the most story to go forward from here would be Joe. So I don't really see anyone else coming out in this one, unfortunately. Like, you could have a Swerve per se winner, but I don't really see that being like a big thing. Though, again, they have been teasing a few things here on the last few weeks of the show. So there are a couple other things that you can start to feel like are potential matches, or other things that, could be on the show next week. So, all these things are always going somewhere, where it does become the question. But yes, it is one of those things where it has been a bit of a slow build for this one, of the matches that are coming up for Turning Point. Another match that we'll get into now is the winner of Marsha and Alicia will face Jordan Grace at Turning Point for the Knockouts World title. Now, $1 billion says that Marsha's winning, and $1 billion says that they kind of rushed this a little bit with Alicia and Marsha. I think it maybe should have been Tasha here. Maybe that would have, I don't know, given Marsha something to do. But then again, I don't know. It's tough to say, but again, this is one of those things where you're like, well, like you've got to have things for later. You can't just go, oh, well, what are we going to do later? I don't know, we don't have plans. But again, that might be upcoming at some point soon, hopefully. But it's one of those things, and it's just one of those things about these sorts of matches. Very, very predictable. Unfortunately, I don't see Lish winning this one, and I do think it's a bit rushed. So yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate. But you can't do anything about that, because again, it does feel like it's a very tough situation in some regards, because it's like, well, who else is like gonna face Marsha or whatever. There isn't really much else to be discussing here, and who could be, next, or what could be next, or whatever, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's a difficult set of circumstances, but it is what it is. So yeah, they put some stuff up for next week as well that I did want to discuss. I guess mainly being the match between Ash by Elegance and Jody Threat. Now, this is, in my opinion, again, leading slowly towards them, i.e. the Elegance pairing. I don't know what to kind of call them as a team, but yes, the Elegance pairing, or the Bi-Elegances, I don't know, whatever, facing off against Jody and Danny Luna, aka Spitfire, in a tag team title match. Now, I don't feel like Ash and Heather Bi-Elegance will win those titles, especially not this early on in their run. And it's, again, sort of same thing for Jody and Danny. It feels like, well, they only just won the damn things. And it's like, it is one of those things that I keep saying about the women's tag team titles. It's just so difficult and whatnot to really maintain a tag team division, like it is, and again, same thing with the women's singles division. It makes both of them suffer. If you had one set of singles division, at least like you could give everyone that was in that division a story to the title, or to, a singles title. When you're breaking people up, tag teams up, and then you're forming tag teams, and you're all this sort of stuff on a, week to week or even month to month basis or whatever it is, it's really tough to keep everything consistent. And like, Ash and Heather really had, they've only had one tag team match, and they won that one, but it's like, they haven't done anything. Like, yes, they've beaten the champs, but it's like, you need a certain level of feeling like, these guys have earned it, even if they're heels. Yes, alright, fair enough. They've won their matches by hook or by crook. They have won their matches, you know, at least a few matches, not just one, you know, like, so it's like, well, and again, like, Jody and Danny have just won it. It's like, well, again, I really feel like they should just, like, say these titles, you know, that's it. You know, we just can't keep it going. It's just too much. It's very interesting, some of the stories that do come from it sometimes. But again, it's just, well, usually it's all about, you know, betrayal or whatever. And sometimes that's interesting. But again, it's just like, this isn't a real tag team division for the most part. It's just cobbled together stuff that, you know, is trying to hold together, you know, and that's what they're doing. They're just trying too hard in some ways, and it's like, just let them all be single stars, you know, like, let them fight for something else, or let them all try to be the number one contender to women's title, because again, it's like, well, who's gonna challenge, you know, for the title after Jordan's finished challenging for it? Who's gonna challenge Marsha? Maybe Tasha, that's about it, like, that, or maybe they might actually give friggin' Savannah Evans a couple of wins or something. She hasn't even appeared on TV since she attacked Li Ling Lee. And Li Ling Ling hasn't even appeared either. And it's like, you know, and I get that. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, you know, what's going on, what's happening, or whatever. To a degree, it's like, well, this is what we've got to do, or this is how it's going down, or this is what's, you know, we're trying to boil this, not just, you know, or we're trying to simmer this, not just boil it, you know. So I guess they must be doing something. Same thing, like, as I said, with Josh Alexander and Steve Macklin. Seems like that's going somewhere still-ish, kind of, which is kind of cool in some ways, you know, with this whole, you know, the Northern Armory, and they got their first, you know, win as a tag team, or as a unit, or a faction, or whatever it is. Kind of am interested in seeing them do more as a faction or as a unit as well. But one thing that really interests me, I guess, and it might not pan out for a little while, is that Speedball Mike Bailey has been reported as being, his contract is being up with TNA. So, and to me, it's like, well, you know, like, if he's going, good luck to him. Best of, we try to do this whenever anyone's leaving or whatever. Best of luck to them. Wasn't ever going to get right into everything that they were doing with him this year, because it was just like stop and start, like, type things as well. Like, I don't know why. Perhaps, like, they had some level of, like, well, you know, we'll try to, you know, and I think this happened with Jordan too, but we'll try to appease him, and we'll try to say, hey, you know, if you sign that contract again to extend or whatever, we could see, you know, doing some work with you more in the future, and this and that, or whatever it is, or at least we'll give you these sorts of opportunities. And I don't know whether it was that he said no to going to NXT, and they just said, well, we need it on NXT, so we're just taking the title off of you because you won't go. So I don't know whether that was the case or what. I don't know. I think that did cause a little bit of friction there as well. But, you know, that's what business is. That's how business works. And if you're not understanding and not willing to understand why that is, or what's going on, and why it's necessary, or why it's wanted, then it's like, well, yeah, you know, like, you need to realize this is not about you, you know, in a sense. This is about, you know, the cross-promotional environment that we find ourselves in with WWE NXT. So, and yes, like, I've said a few of my grievances with that here and there as well. and I will continue to say those grievances here and there as well, that it hasn't been very even or equal. But then again, as I sort of have said, look at the NXT roster, and well, there's your answer, because the NXT roster is made up of a lot of much younger, much less overexposed or well-known superstars or whatever, that sort of thing. There's a lot of young, up-and-coming talent there. There isn't a lot of big-time name wrestlers. They're still trying to build that name. Obafemi, whatnot, Trick Williams, they're starting to pull that together and whatnot. So, yeah. But again, it's just one of those things of, you know, if WWE was to send some of their more major names from NXT, it means they're not using their more major names on NXT, and they really need those major names on NXT, you know, to, you know, bolster that brand as much as what they can, you know, because, you know, otherwise they lose out. But then again, same with TNA. It's like, well, why are we sending you, you know, somebody from our roster, you know, that's a major or fairly major integral part of our roster, and then we don't have them, you know? So it hurts us too, you know, like I don't know whether, I think that should be considered, that, hey, you know, we've really, you know, given pretty much our all to you guys for the most part, and yet you guys continue to, you know, like, and again, maybe that, as I said, they can't send many much better people, but again, it's like, well, you guys really haven't sent us very much to work with. You haven't sent us anyone of any real consequence. So, you know, it's not like this relationship is going to end based on that, but it's like, well, why are we sending you our top guys if you're not going to send us anyone or anything, or at least like send us a whole bunch of something, or at least promote our events more, or at least do some more stuff for us, because, or really, really help us, you know, like in some way, in some form, in some fashion, to, you know, get this thing going for us, because you're really getting a lot of the benefit, like 90% of the benefit from this, and we're not getting a whole lot from it, you know, realistically. So, you know, you need to come to the table a little bit more with a little bit more stuff for us in some sense, you know, one way or another, because otherwise this isn't a equal partnership, and, you know, we're much more of a smaller organization, and you're always going to be getting, you know, a lion's share of the profits of professional wrestling or sports entertainment or whatever you want to call it anyway. So just sending some of us, you know, something, some way, or at least promoting our stuff just to, you know, help us get that ball rolling, you know, a little bit more, help us get, you know, proper TV deal, you know, would be really appreciated, you know, because again, I think we deserve that, at least if you're not going to come to the, you know, or not willing to come to the table, or you can't come to the table with more talent for us that are more higher up or more of a name recognition, then all right, well, you know, let's settle this and say, okay, you've got to do something for us that means that it's worth it for us. You know, you can't just expect us just to keep feeding people to you or giving people to you or whatever. This is not a one-way street. But yeah, I think going back to Bailey and whatnot, and his potential future or whatever's going on there, as I said, it might be very difficult, not from you know, WWE or AEW or whoever else not being interested, perhaps, but from the perspective of the US immigration system and what they're going to be doing in 2025 through to 2020, whatever it is, 2029, I think it is. Jesus, that That's going to be a long, crazy amount of time, nearly to 2030. That is ridiculous. But anyway, yes, if you look at it that way and you look at how things are shaping out there, you know, same with Josh Alexander in the Northern Armory, same with just about anyone else that's on that roster, or even in AEW or WWE or whatever it is. I think that they're going to have to, so even if they're comfortable with touring in the US, hence of what happened in the US recently, not just due to political things and saying, oh no, we're still open for business. And this is something that I've seen a few places say, no, we're still open for business and we're going to be state run and we're going to, you know, ensure our own laws here for people in our state. So perhaps like they might have to swing it in the states that do allow it, or whatever it is. I don't know, or whatnot. I don't know how it's going to work. But again, I think that a critical look at this sort of thing is well and truly important for them, because again, you can't, if you're Speedball Bailey or whoever you are, and you're seeing, hey, no immigrants, you're an immigrant one way or the other. Even if you're there on a work visa, that could be saying, hey, no entry, only for US, you know. So, you know, I don't know about what the level of things will be, and I think that does need to be considered for. I don't think it's something that they can merely brush off and say, oh, well, you know. I think it is one of those things that perhaps, you know, you have to kind of wait to see, well, time will tell, or we'll see what happens to a degree. What are the policies? What are the laws? What are the restrictions? You know, how do we get around them, etc. And that's not just from a talent perspective. That's from an office, stroke, management, whatever position. You need to be looking at saying, okay, well, we need our wrestlers, or we need our people that are, you know, key to our company or key to this brand or whatever it is, to be appearing at these shows that we have. That is inherent in their contract. You know, it's not just saying, oh, well, they broke their contract, therefore let's shoot them in the foot. No, let's go and say, well, why did that happen? Let's, you know, especially if they called and said, hey, you know, the US border guards, you know, they aren't letting us in because now we're quote-unquote illegal immigrants or whatever. We're illegal workers coming into the country. Whatever it is, you know. So again, knowing what the situation is, understanding the situation, you know, and working within that framework, or saying, okay, well, we cannot operate under this framework because this is a framework in which, you know, our wrestlers will not be, or our crew, or whoever it is, or I as an individual will not be able to work in the US during this time. And that's for 4 years or whatever it is a long period of time. Very long period of time, realistically. You will miss out on lots of opportunities in that time period if you're unable to, you know, wrestle for that long. So, you know, as I said before, I think that, you know, they have to look at touring more internationally, because, or even setting up more of an international basis of touring, just to say, no, we're not going to be part of this sort of stuff. We're not going to be involved in this sort of thing, because, well, we're not being involved, but we're not really going to fake it till we make it. We're not going to pretend that, you know, everything's all right, we're going to go, okay, well, this is the situation, this has happened several times, this continues to happen, we're continuing to see these sorts of things being an issue. It's time to, you know, make some decisions that, you know, right, well, we're going to tour, you know, in Canada, Mexico, Europe, the UK, Australia, some of these other places, whatever else it is, so that we can actually have, you know, our wrestlers who are in, you know, maybe make your base in you know, in Canada, you know, because Anthem's base or base of operations is in Canada. They're a Canadian organization. So saying, okay, well, we're going to make the pilgrimage for the next at least 3 or 4 years, whatever it is, until things die down or until things are set that, hey, these people can come in as long as they're on a work visa or whatever it is, etc., etc. Whatever it is, the specifics of whatever they're going to do until that 4-year period's up or until those laws are repealed or whatever it is, you know, right, well, we have to work within that. We cannot, you know, go to these places and just pretend, oh, well, you know, it's going to be all right, or we're going to have to sneak people in, or whatever else it is. Maybe it'll be all right for Canadian wrestlers, but they've had difficulties before. So, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, regarding Bayley, I do feel like it's a little bit bad. It sucks quite a bit, in my opinion, that they didn't really foresee this, or not foresee this, but they didn't really plan very well for this, I don't think. They really should have said, you know, well, we know your contract's ending, and we know you want to leave, and we know, or whatever it is, we haven't been able to come to an agreement on things and whatnot. But, hey, would you please consider, not for us so much, but would you consider coming back to have a match with Trent Seven to put him over so that he can wrestle here or with us for however long he's wrestling with us, you know, so that we can use him to help other people, you know, getting over and whatnot, and to get him over. Just to explain the situation and say, hey, you know, we've had our differences or whatever it is or whatnot. That's different. Would you consider this, please? At least consider it. If you say no, you say no. We will understand, but, you know, well, we won't as well, but, you know, would you consider it, you know? So at least, I don't know whether that's been done or whether that's been discussed or what happened, but I think, or same thing with Moose, like, it's like, well, where's his contractual rematch? You know, like, I don't know. And it's like, what's he doing? You know, and who's Moose gonna face? You know, or whatever. What's he gonna do now? Can't face Trent Seven. You know, and it doesn't seem like anyone's really perhaps lined up right now for a title match with Moose. Maybe they'll get something going at Turning Point. But I don't know. It really feels a bit weird. Hardy's, we're seeing them, you know, in that 6-man tag. It's like, well, obviously we're going to see them at Turning Point, but who against? Like you start thinking, well, is it going to be Hammerstone and something? Because it's like, well, they attacked him, and it's like, well, maybe, but then again, it's like, well, it's like, it would make sense if they could get a 6-man tag team victory and to some extent, and then go from there to try to beat the champs, but then come up short somehow. But then again, it starts becoming like, again, the same problem. Feels like you've already gone through the whole roster of people who are there, and it feels like, again, same, the male tag team division feels very thin at a lot of times. So especially now that the system's not really like wrestling together as much, or Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards aren't, I kind of feel like, again, as I sort of was going to say, that Moose needs to tag with somebody, like consistently tag with somebody from the system. Whether it's Myers or JDC, I don't know. But they like, I said this before when I was saying now he's on track to being a Grand Slam champion, and the only thing missing is a tag team title win. So, but then again, you could kind of argue to some extent, well, you know, the system was the tag team champions, and they perhaps should have used the Freebird rule at some point, just so that Moose could effectively hold the title. You know, and technically be recognized as a tag team champion. I don't know. But then again, as I said, I still feel like he should win it, and he should, you know, add that to his resume, add that to his legacy, because it would really, you know, as I said, maybe not right now, or even in the next 6 months or whatever it is, but adding that last little bit of being tag team champion and a Grand Slam champion would really solidify him sort of as being a TNA guy, per se. And again, like, perhaps that's where they're going at some point. But yeah, I think that's an idea of, you know, let's go this way and let's do it. You know, let's make the best. I don't know whether it's make the best team or make the team that would work the best. Because, like, if you were to say what's the best team as far as, like, legitimacy or wins and losses or whatever else out of, you know, who's in the system, it's probably Eddie and Moose. Like, they're the two guys that have the most legitimacy, the most wins, are the most, not over, but they're the most consistent. But yeah, like, one of the things that are, like, it's very clear, as I was talking about Joe Hendry and that, it's like they're keeping him sort of orbiting that title, orbiting around Nick Nemeth. So it's clear that he's going to get another shot. When, where, how exactly? Like, I feel like this is a powder keg waiting to explode. And it might happen at Turning Point. Maybe. I don't know. Obviously, Turning Point is one of those obvious names. It's a turning point. I don't know. But, you know, it feels like it's one of those things that, well, are you going to do something at Final Resolution? Are you going to, you know, like, are you going to do something in Genesis? What, you know, how are you weaving through from where you are to where you're going, you know? And how are you, like, ticking the boxes for the other people, you know? Because you've got Mike Santana, you've got all these other guys that are there, and you've got Steve Macklin, you've got Jonathan Gresham, you've got so many other guys there. You've got EY, yes, and same with, like, Rhino and Kazarian and all this other stuff. It's like, well, what are you doing? Where are you going? What's this? You know, like, and, like, it should feel like that, as sort of said, very similarly, in the women's division. It should feel like, oh, what about this person? That person's there, and oh, this person's vying for the title. When you have that feeling of like, oh man, it feels like every single one of these people could win the title or could be in contention for the title. You don't know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. it's like, oh man, like, well, where's this going down, or when's this going down? And maybe, I don't know, maybe again, like, you start looking at Kazarian and start saying, okay, well, this is actually our turning point. Our turning point is, instead of going with Nemeth, we're going with, with him. And then at Final Resolution, maybe Nick Nemeth again, like I say, it's like he's not a cheap talent, I would say, but he is a draw for the company, and it kind of hasn't really finished his rivalry per se with Hendry, or with that whole thing and whatnot's going on. But still, I still feel like you could move along from it and say, well, that's irrelevant or whatever, and now it's all about Joe and his climb, his journey, and he starts his climb and his journey at Genesis. His real climb at Genesis. He wins some sort of big match or something like at Genesis, and then his like #1 contendership, or something. Somehow. I don't know. But again, like, doing those sorts of things to go, okay, how are we doing this? How are we putting this together? How, like, how's it all coming together? Like, has to be worked out within the whole context. As I said before, it's not just saying, well, let's give this person a win and let's give this person a win or whatever. It's seeing, okay, well, we just gave Joe Hendry a win. Now who's he going to face? Oh, we haven't thought that far ahead. Well, we have to think further ahead, because if he wins, then who's he going to face? Because he's got to face somebody after this. Or if he loses, then what happens? Like, or how does he lose, or whatever? Like, where is this? And again, it feels like maybe Nick Nemeth might turn heel. I don't know. But I don't know. As I said, it doesn't feel like he really ever got the thing that he should have got in WWE. To an extent. So I think that TNA is really like, okay, let's try to give you the best run that we could give you here for whatever it is, and then, okay, once that's done, we'll see where we're at, because we're really trying to draw people in, and we're not just using you because of that, but this is something that does draw people in. It goes, oh, what's going on with this guy? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? Surely this guy is not just not talking to JBL or whatever, because or whatnot. And so what's happening there? What, is JBL actually going to wrestle, or is this just a few stock appearances, because they made like 3 or 4 appearances or something, or whatever it is. So it's like, well, again, I am guessing it's not a contract, it's just like a handshake agreement for an amount of money to appear at certain times and dates, or whatever it is. So he's obviously not really doing much, what would you call it, media or whatever. So, but yeah, I think, like, again, maybe that's, he might be going like, I think he said somewhere about, like, he wasn't really happy with his last little run or whatever. I was like, well, maybe he's trying to, get back in there or do something to have one last big moment of some sort. So, but how that comes together, etc., yeah, is, I think they will work it out, but it's like, it's the path. It's just like, okay, well, you're giving me all these seeds, and I'm trying to work out, okay, how are these seeds gonna grow? And then again, it's like, well, maybe sometimes we don't know, because, like, well, again, that perhaps foreplanning isn't there enough sometimes. It's like, where are all the heels for Nick Nemeth to fight? Where are all the heels for Santana to fight? Where are the heels for Joe Hendry to fight? Like you've got to give some of these heels wins sometimes so that you can start going, okay, it feels like they're winning and they're actually meaning something. Same for, Moose, as I was, saying before, like, where's his challengers? Where's the babyface for him to be off against? What's the title match going, or is there going to be a title match for the X Division? Having no title match, but having a number one contendership, that'll be fine as long as there's some sort of representation. Same for the women's division. It can't just be a title match, in my opinion. There should be real feuds going on, and that's why I said, like, Lish and that should, and what's name, Slamovich shouldn't be done now. It should be done later down the road, so that it's one of those things that feels like it's less crowded in some ways, because again, as I said, it is good when things are sort of semi-crowded, but it's like, no, you've got to keep one thing going for the most part. This is about, this should have been about Masha and Jordan the whole way through. Like, it really should have been about, you got lucky or whatever, that sort of thing, and I'll see you at Turning Point. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's really tough always to try to, read the seeds or whatever. But it's one of those things. It's like, well, a lot of times it's really easy to read some of these things sometimes when you see a match made and it's like, oh, okay, some guy versus a jobber, effectively. So it's like, well, I could tell the outcome of that, without much effort, unless somebody's going to do some shenanigans. So, it's really easy. It's like, well, Jordan's not winning the title back. So it's like, again, besides the fact that this will be a banger, where are the stakes? Again, more stakes. Okay, it's going to be Monsters Ball. It's going to be no DQ. They've already done no DQ, I think, as well. Or something else. I can't remember. But again, just something on top of the, I don't know what you could do between Masha and Grace that it wouldn't feel like, oh man, this is, too personal, or this is getting, going to break the friendship or whatever. But that's kind of the match you almost need. You almost need a match that makes it feel like, oh, is this going to ruin the friendship or whatever, type thing. It's almost what their match at Bound for Glory, kind of was and whatnot, and still sort of kind of is or whatever. But again, like, just figuring those little things out, and it's like, this is why it's like, within a month of, starting to do something, it's like really tough to turn around and say, oh, okay, here's the pay-per-view, and cutting that back a little bit, or cutting it as far back as what you can, make it at almost 2 months of a build, makes it better, because then you can tell the story easier. But at that point, like, as they sort of seem to have their bigger pay-per-views every 3 or so months, or whatever it is, or at least once every quarter. So, yeah. Again, every 3 months or so. So thinking that way and saying, well, instead of like, we need maybe one show. Like, let's cut the shows a little bit more and cut down a little bit, or, rearrange some things so that it makes it, specific and less of like, we're starting this, like, or whatever. We're going to start doing this. Okay, yes, this is happening, but it's not going to happen until it's going to happen in 2 months. Like, this other story is not going to wrap up at, or not even going to happen at Turning Point, like Savannah and Li Ling Li. We haven't forgotten about them, but we're going to do that story later. Or, but then again, the problem with that is it needs to have already happened, that specific story, I think. But, again, finding these things and saying, okay, well, this is where we're at, this is where we're going, and this is why we're doing it, or, just makes the division a lot better. And it's like, well, you look at Heather by Elegance, it's like, well, she's kind of a new character. Ash has kind of had her chance at the title a little bit before with Grace, but now she could have another chance with Masha as the champion. So again, like you could almost have her being like a protege, or in that protege mentor kind of role of like Ash is not just trying to directly challenge Masha, but she's using Heather by Elegance as her mentee, as her protege to weaken Masha before she challenges her, so that she will have a better chance. That little bit of extra thing to somebody or something like that makes it feel like, hey, we're really thinking about this person going into that direction, but we're also pushing this other young wrestler into another position, and making them look like, hey, well, they might be in real contention in the future, not just, well, they are here and they are wrestling for the title or whatever, but it's like, well, yeah, but they haven't got much chance. Yes, they obviously haven't got much chance realistically, but this is Ash's plan, obvious, in some form or fashion. You could do that nearly with anyone and everyone, or, in these sort of tag team roles like that within the women's division in some form or fashion. You could be saying, Jody and Danny are friends and whatever behind the scenes, and they respect each other or whatever. That's their story, but they've got to wrestle each other here and there, or they've got to, again, making tag team things for the women a sometimes thing will make it a lot better, in my opinion, and just saying, okay, there's no tag team titles. Maybe there's a mid-card women's title or whatever. I don't know. But again, that would be still pretty tough, in my opinion, to maintain. I think just maintaining the women's title division will be enough for now, just to, let's scrap this and let's go in a different direction, and let's just give everyone stories that lead to the title, to the world title, or to the main title for now, because it's just not working, and it hasn't worked, and there's no point in continuing to do it. So, but yeah, anyway, guys, we'll continue to keep our eyes on it. I'm sure there'll be announcements next week on more stuff. So, and then it'll probably be even more announced the week, or, well, basically the day before, I believe it is, of the show. So we'll definitely be trying to cover that we'll definitely be covering that as well. But it's usually pretty tough to get everything in on the day before as well. So, things happen sometimes and whatnot. So sometimes it's a bit later than what I want it to be. But yeah, it happens. But yeah, same with the review of Turning Point. And we'll have to wait and see where everything kind of goes and where everything kind of lands. Because once you get more context, you can actually start trying to say, okay, well, now Nemeth's heel. Now it starts to work because now there's a heel champion, or now that Kazarian's the champion. Okay, now there's a heel at the top. Perhaps undeservingly so in some ways or some regards, or somewhat of a paper champion in some regards or some ways again. But hey, here we are, and let's go. Let's get into doing this and get to the point of, well, now we've got to move it on. It's not just, this is the new thing. No, this is the way forward for the next story that leads to the next person, and then that leads to the next person, and so on and so forth. So that's what they've got to cultivate. And yeah, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one, and hope you guys will join me again in another one.